We need to have a standardized of pharmaceutical reps.
The people that provide education, the doctors.
Who is the chairman and CEO.
The fascination the public has.
The impact on society, the impact on unemployment.
Only good drugs have the opportunity to really benefit patients in the commercial setting.
But I think really what's most important for investors is making sure good drugs are getting to patients in a relatively timely fashion.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's summer 2025. And as you guys know, here on the podcast, we talk about all things happening in pharma, biotech, healthcare, the life sciences, and much, much more. Today, I have two very, very special guests that I'm very excited to talk to, Dr. Eric Schmidt and Dr. Josh Shimmer, who are both at Cantor Fitzgerald, where they are senior research analysts covering the biotech industry. Just a kind of little of an overview of each of them. Dr. Eric Schmidt is currently a senior research analyst at Cantor Fitzgerald. Again, he covers the biotech industry. He joined the firm back in September of 2023 from Allogene Therapeutics, where he was a CFO at that organization. He has a lot of experience in the biotech equity analyst space, over 20 years. He's been rated as a top analyst at Cohen & Company for many years. He's been recognized at a lot of the trade outlets, Reuters, Institutional Investor, Wall Street Journal, and more. He has a bachelor's in chemistry from UPenn and a PhD in biology from MIT, where he also serves on the visiting committee for the Department of Biology. We also are really excited to talk to Dr. Shimmer, who joins Cantor from Evercore ISI, where he served as a senior managing director on their biotech research team, where he focused primarily on small, mid-size, and select large-cap biotech companies. He's been ranked the #1 analyst in Institutional Investors All-America Research Team for 5 consecutive years. So a lot of great insights and experience I'm sure that he's going to bring to today's podcast. So welcome, Josh, and welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. So for those that aren't familiar, maybe, can you explain what does a biotech equity analyst do, and why does your role matter for investors in the biotech or pharma industry as a whole?
I think we're still trying to figure out just that, and especially justify our value. But go ahead, Josh.
I keep trying to tell Eric how to do the job, but he hasn't quite figured it out. Just kidding. I think that's the best way to summarize it. And we look at the biotech industry. We try to look at it as a whole. It's obviously a very large whole, and then we each cover a select number of very specific companies within biotech, and those are the ones that we provide recommendations specifically on. The companies that are doing the best research, that are advancing the most important programs, and of course the ones where we think investors are going to generate a return.
Now, when you're evaluating a biotech company, what are some of the things you look at? Like, obviously the science, the team, the financials, all of it. I'm sure you look at a lot of different factors. Talk to me a little bit about that when you're kind of making a decision or coming up with some of your insights.
Well, I think everything you said matters, Will. It's a confluence of factors. Josh and I actually often argue whether it's the person that makes the drug or the drug that makes the person, and in other words, whether the management team is more important than the asset or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And I think neither of us has yet to win that argument. So, there's a little bit of magic fairy dust here that gets sprinkled in and determines which companies are more successful than others. But I think what you can do is roll up your sleeves, get into the science. At the end of the day,
I would just add to that all the things that could go wrong from early stage development through later stage development, regulatory, commercial, and then challenges either from other companies or generics and biosimilar. Right? That's probably first and foremost what we're always trying to gauge.
So on that note, what is your take on the FDA's announcement a few weeks ago? You probably saw Dr. Marty Makary talk about the vouchers, the priority vouchers. They want to accelerate drug approval for certain, areas. What's your take on that? Because, for me and talking to a lot of people in the industry, obviously there's some folks that are very happy about that, but there's a lot of skepticism because when you're accelerating approvals and getting things out without maybe hard outcomes and more robust data, there could be risks. How does that, I guess, factor into what you do when you're looking to assess risk like Josh was talking about?
Well, we're Josh, your turn, Josh. Go ahead. Go.
Exactly. Hey, look, in this case, I think they've indicated they're going to start with 5 pilot programs in a sea of drug development. and none of those five have been disclosed. So at this point, it's more theoretical than anything else and tangible. We're still waiting to see what criteria they do apply. Now, to your point, there's a reason that these reviews can take as many months as they do to check all the boxes and make sure that a drug is appropriately vetted. And so, shortening that down to just 1 to 2 months is both opportunity if you can shave off a few months of the regulatory review, but also risk if it doesn't go smoothly and you've actually inadvertently delayed your time to product approval. I don't think there are that many who are overly frustrated right now with the current review times, as long as they proceed with accuracy and precision, meaning that the final result is an appropriate result. Obviously, every month counts, but for the most part, that really hasn't been a high priority concern for many of the companies we deal with. Oftentimes during the review period, is the time that the company is starting to gear up and put commercial infrastructure in place, which itself takes time. And so, we'll see to the extent to which this really moves the needle for much of our sector. But for now, it's a bit of it seems like a bit of a niche project. If again we can shorten review times, that would be nice to have. But I think really what's most important for investors is making sure good drugs are getting to patients in a relatively timely fashion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I would agree.
I think, well, your question kind of alluded to this, Will, but there obviously is a very rigorous debate ongoing right now around Sarepta and whether we are approving the right drugs. And you would think that investors would just want to approve anything, as fast and timely as possible. That's not the case. We also want to set the bar at an appropriate level such that only good drugs make it to market and only good drugs, have the opportunity to really benefit patients in the commercial setting. That's not what any of us want to see. And I know it's a judgment call on the part of the FDA and patient community and others, but that's the most difficult thing. And it probably matters a lot more than just the timeliness of the approval.
And to that point, I worked in the pharma space for about almost 20 years. And what I've seen is over that time, much greater increased level of scrutiny, of visibility from a regulatory perspective than when I first started in the late 90s. Are you guys seeing that? And I guess, how is that impacting maybe what you do? Because in my discussions with the FDA, I've been to the FDA many times, I've found that there's a lot more concern about things like off-label promotion. There's concerns about, even the credibility and the competencies of the people running clinical trials. I'll give you an example. So I worked at a company where when I first got there, this drug was being used in combination with another drug already out and approved in the market. And we had no data on the combination. We had no data on it. Doctors were using it, but we had no data. So the first thing I said as the medical director was, we need to have data there. And you were talking about the management team and the competency of the management team, the pedigree, et cetera. I mean, I think that plays a big role, because in that situation, it was a big debacle. They ended up recalling the drug. That happened after I left. They recalled the drug. But I saw that coming, that problem, because I could see that, one, they didn't understand how to design the trial. And two, it almost felt like they were worried about what that study was going to find. But we had to do it because the physicians, the thought leader physicians were asking for it. So, I mean, have you seen that shift and that change over the last 2 decades?
Look, I think, as you know, Will, back in the Vioxx days, 2004, we had, a very public, very unfortunately embarrassing for industry safety risk. And in the post-Vioxx world, that started about 20 years ago. So you may have been alluding to this. Things definitely have stepped up in the last 20 years. I think in the last few years, we've been operating with, maybe a more even degree of regulation in our industry. It's high. We're a heavily regulated industry. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think it's gotten worse in the last few years. And some might even argue that, there's been too much red tape. I know that's something that FDA commissioner believes is the case. So it wouldn't be a bad thing if we could, see some of that bureaucracy roll back a little bit.
I think one important dynamic that you may anticipate touching upon is the competitive innovation coming out of China, which does not have necessarily the same regulatory requirements that may slow down drug development in the US. And so it's always a balance of risk and speed, and there may be some pressure now on the U.S. to opt for speed over safety as much as we've been doing.
So that's a good segue. One of the questions I was going to ask about was the Trump tariffs. So, probably about a month or two ago, there's a lot of buzz in the news about the tariffs in terms of what their impact could be on the industry. Talk to me a little bit about that, do you see this as a positive for the industry, long term, in terms of maybe, bringing manufacturing more domestically because of some of the concerns, maybe what's happening with China and being more competitively, what's your take? I guess, Eric, I'll address that question to you.
I thought Josh was getting ready for this one, but thank
Or
you
we
for
could we
directing
give
as
it to
well.
Josh.
Yeah,
We give it to
no,
Josh.
give it a shot. I mean,
It's a tough one. Let Eric handle it.
you sort of wind back the clock 3 months, and there were all kinds of macro risks, and certainly MFN was one. Certainly, tariffs was another.
Yeah, I guess what I haven't heard folks highlight, maybe somewhat surprisingly, is Tariff's point around billions and billions and billions of capital requirements to redomicile manufacturing to the U.S. I mean, that is invariably going to draw dollars out of the M&A pool that biotech is often dependent on. It's not like M&A is going away. I mean, the large pharma companies still generate adequate amounts of capital to allocate to various initiatives, including M&A, including share repurchase, including dividends, including manufacturing. But I think in general, pharma doesn't have as much liquidity for M&A as most investors think they do. And given how much enthusiasm there is for a new wave of M&A in biotech, anything that draws capital away from that endeavor is not necessarily a good thing for the sector.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an interesting take. I haven't heard that either, in terms of what the impact would be, because you're right. I mean, it's going to be a big investment for these companies to be able to bring things back domestically. Let's talk a little bit about M&A, because one of the things that I see with pharma and biotech companies, when they're acquiring a company or when there's a large merger, oftentimes one of the challenges that we see on our end is that there's not a lot of uniformity, unfortunately, in terms of best practices or just practices in general within the organization. And this is why I'm a big believer in a harmonization through certification or credentialing the people that work in pharma, because it kind of level sets the organization. Do you see that sometimes as a challenge when they're trying to kind of come together? There's different cultures, different practices. How does that kind of impact their ability to launch a product or maintain its success?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the acquisitions we see are asset-based acquisitions. You're buying the product often more than the people. Now, that'll be different if you think you're buying a platform that may be able to generate additional products down the road. That can be difficult to preserve the know-how, the culture of the organization. But I think in general, certainly as of late, most of these are really asset type product acquisitions, and as such, I don't see it being a substantial impediment. What we have done, some do it better than others, but overall, the track record is a little bit disappointing because these products rarely actually hit the projections that are initially laid out in the filings. And in fact, the actual sales performance of the assets that they're acquiring are often less than what the sell-side analysts have projected them to be. So kind of, everyone's overestimating the potential of these products in particular. So it can be a bit of a dangerous area for pharma to begin with. But on the other hand, there's very few companies that can organically deliver the type of innovation and top and bottom line growth to be sustainable businesses, even through important patent expiries. And so there's kind of no escaping the need of pharma to diversify via biotech. Of course, you could argue, the extent to which that's best done through M&A versus joint ventures and other collaborations. And it is also very company specific. Some have better track records than others.
Mm-hmm.
I think Josh is 100% correct. Unfortunately for pharma, the alternative is to give the money back to shareholders in the form of dividends or share buybacks. And that either way you do it, it has sort of the consequences of shrinking the enterprise, right? Becoming a smaller company because you're giving back cash or giving back assets. And very few pharmaceutical management teams are willing to do that. And that's one of the reasons why we see a lot of M&A in the space, despite, as Josh mentioned, the economics not necessarily being favorable for those larger companies.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. Now, are there specific therapeutic areas that you guys are really, seeing that could be on the verge of a breakout? Cell therapy, gene editing, radio pharma, some of the stuff going on with AI, some device stuff. For the folks that are listening out there that are wondering, what should I be paying attention to if I'm a pharma exec and what's happening in the biotech space and looking for an asset to acquire?
And then you can use that same ability to co-locate your biology by bringing in an immune signal too through T cell engagers, right? So you can have a single antigen on cancer cell and bring to that antigen an immune cell like a T cell and do that to eradicate cancers. Again, a very exciting field. Josh covers a really cool stock in that space, Janix, but there are others as well. And I think this whole biology, which again is a little bit underappreciated, is ready to explode across so many different combinations. But go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I would extend that to bispecifics for autoimmune disorders, which are also starting to gain some really interesting and exciting traction. Other themes that I'm following: machine learning and AI enabled optimized constructs. I think certainly in the oncology space for small molecules, and there's work going on in biologics as well. Cardiovascular, another theme where we're starting to see some really exciting innovation to address still the leading cause of mortality in the country, in a space that really hasn't seen much innovation to date, but across inflammation, heart failure, lipids, there's now a critical, important mass of smaller companies poised to deliver what I think are going to be some very meaningful breakthroughs, and eventually, those are the type of indications where you'd imagine pharma is going to have to play an important role in commercializing. And then along those lines, a little bit more tangential, is innovation in obesity, kind of beyond the GLP and related classes that we're seeing targeted and driving success to date. There are obviously tremendous products and really to patients, but they also do have important Achilles heels that make them very difficult to stay on for an extended period of time, and they can also be accompanied by loss of muscle mass. Now it's debated whether that's a functional issue or not, but there's some really interesting and exciting innovation in that space as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all that. And I think, especially on the note of the GLP-1s, we're seeing so much activity in that space from our side. And there's a lot of concern, though. There's a lot of, as I'm sure you guys know, there's been a lot of data come out and basically to say that once you get off of these drugs, you get a rebound effect pretty quickly. And that's always been a problem, I think, in obesity in general from a pharmacological perspective, is you can lose the weight quickly, but weight maintenance has always been difficult with obesity products. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen.
Maybe myself, even as a young professional back in the day, I was a little bit too shy about seeking others' help and input and guidance. And now that I'm a little bit of an elderly gentleman, I'm always willing to help people. Who isn't willing to help the younger generation? It's actually one of the things we get the most satisfaction from. And I think, if you reach out and ask for help, you'll be surprised just how often people say, of course. And there's nothing that makes up for years of experience, right? So, of course, you need the ambition, you need the drive, you need the intelligence, you need all the special attributes to succeed in a very competitive environment today for entrepreneurs in this space. It's not easy, it's quite challenging, but I think mentorship could be a big advantage.
Yeah, I was going to say mentor as well, but maybe what I'll add is choose that mentor carefully. Because the advice that you get there's no textbook, there's no playbook for how to do this right? But some do it very well and some do it not so well, and so you need to be very mindful in terms of who is giving you that advice. Obviously, more than one mentor, the better, because now you can start to think about triangulating in on best practices. I think from our perspective, right, from interacting with Wall Street and with analysts, some of the rules are, you know, integrity, transparency, tell us everything we need to know, not just the things that you think we should know to be constructive on your company, right? We want everything balanced and also always under promise and over deliver to the extent that a company can.
Now, in terms of what you guys do for Cantor, how is that different than, let's say, folks that work for a hedge fund? There's a lot of hedge funds that are biotech or life science focused. We get a lot of questions about that. Talk to maybe the folks that are out there that don't have a lot of background in this area. What's the difference between the two, and maybe what's the day-to-day like in terms of what you guys do at Cantor versus, let's say, at a hedge fund that focuses in the life sciences?
Yeah, I mean, so we try to guide those hedge funds. Many of those hedge funds are our clients, and we are trying to help educate them and give them balanced perspectives on the stocks that we cover in the industry that we cover. Share our own personal views and perspectives, and do our best to have a strong track record so that when we do make a recommendation, our clients, our customers, hedge funds and mutual funds and pension plans, et cetera, listen to us and take our views into account. And so, we have the privilege of working with many different investors and being able to kind of get an overview of general investor sentiment and incorporate that into our perspective in a way that hedge funds, which individually are much more siloed, aren't able to do. So it's very collaborative. We often learn from them and they learn from us, and all in the pursuit of being as right and accurate as we can in predicting the future.
And Eric, I mean, for people that are wondering, what's your day-to-day like?
Well, it's pretty frenetic, to be honest. I mean, maybe we share that with the hedge fund world. We start our days early and we end them pretty late. We do that, out of passion for the most part. Josh and I have both been doing this for now several decades, and we both love it. I mean, there's nothing as exciting as coming to the office and not really even being sure what you're going to do. I mean, you might have a few things that you need to do or want to do, a certain number of reports that you're working on. But we're a little bit slave to the marketplace, right? So if we wake up and there's news on the tape and we need to react to that, our day could go in a completely different direction than we might have otherwise planned. So that's the fun part. No 2 days are ever the same. And the other fun part is that we're in a constant cycle of learning, right? There are so many different drugs and so many different companies out there, and unfortunately, so many diseases that have yet to really have good therapies to control and address their symptoms, that we never get bored. If you get bored easily, if you got a little bit of a residual ADHD, like I think most of us in the marketplace probably have, this is a wonderful career.
So for someone who wants to get into this career, I know Josh, you're an MD by training, Eric, you're a PhD. Tell the folks what is a good path. It sounds like, getting an advanced degree in the sciences helps. But like, talk to someone who's, let's say, going through a PhD program, or someone who's an MD and doesn't want to do traditional kind of clinical practice. How do you get into this space? What would you do? And what are some of the skills that are really important?
No, the most important thing if you want to get into this space is know where the openings and opportunities are, because they're few and far between and they can be competitive. If you don't even know about them, then you can't even throw your hat into the ring. DropoutClub.org is usually a very good platform for disseminating opening spots, whether it's on the sell side or on the buy side. And then what we look for are intelligent problem solvers, hard workers, bring a lot of passion to science and innovation. Teamwork is certainly important, perhaps more so in what we do than what a hedge fund might do. And then in terms of pedigree, I mean, the more science fluent one is coming in, the more likely they are to find a role in our industry. But it really is so much more than that. And there are so many ways to be differentiated. And at the end of the day, that's what we look for is a little bit of differentiation that may be valuable. And it can come in so many different forms, right? It could be a medical degree, it can be a PhD, maybe someone's worked at the FDA, maybe someone has unique understanding of patent law and can add value to that. Because what we do is so diverse. We look at companies that are, just anywhere from just a concept or to having a preclinical program all the way to the companies selling drugs and now having to deal with patent challenges along the way. And we're just looking for insights and ways to anticipate the future with the expertise that we have. So a lot of different ways to get in, but I think also important showing some kind of passion for stocks, for the connection of science and news and updates and drug development and how that translates into stock prices and valuation. Because this is a career where you basically sprint a marathon and you have to really love it. And the more that one loves it, and the more that one is curious and open-minded and intellectually flexible and hardworking, the more success they're going to have. And those are the kind of people that we want to be working with.
So I got to ask Josh, you're an MD by training. How did you, kind of move into this direction? I presume when you were when you were studying to be an MD, you probably weren't thinking you were going to go in this field, or were you?
Oh, goodness, no. I got to the end of my residency training and I wasn't really thrilled with the career paths that were in front of me. I really was not good at all in the lab. Clinical trials seemed to be a little cookie cutter. Practice itself was, too far removed from the cutting edge. I wound up getting an MBA, and through a series of very, very, very fortunate coincidences, found my way to Wall Street, which was actually one of the last places I ever thought I'd wind up going. And super lucky, just through a couple of introductions that I didn't anticipate when I was honestly just getting desperate for what was going to come after my MBA, and just so happy to have kind of stumbled backwards into an industry that I love, and as a result of that passion, have persisted with it in a career and been able to build up a relatively strong brand in doing it. And honestly, I don't know what else I'd be good at.
I'm sure you could find a few things. No, I love it. What about you, Eric? Because again, you're a PhD. You're like me, right? And when I was a PhD, to be honest, I was at Columbia, and really we didn't know much about medical affairs and pharma, what we were going to do then at that point. Mostly it was like you work in the lab. So I'm curious for you as a PhD, you went to MIT. What was the path, the career path you were looking to follow?
Yeah, I don't know anything that Josh would be good at either.
Put ourselves on research.
It's a little bit different for a PhD, right? I mean, unless you really love the bench, unless you really love the day-to-day experimentation at the lab, which some people do and some people don't. I think in a PhD program, you're not necessarily signing up to be an academic for the rest of your life. You're signing up to maybe learn a little bit more about science and fine-tune your analytical thinking and just, kind of enjoy the pursuit of science for the sake of science, but not always is that a career path. So after my PhD, I started looking for things that I could do otherwise, other than bench work, which I didn't really enjoy, and was just really, really fortunate to learn about the existence of this job at a fairly, young stage of the industry at that time. The biotech sector was kind of in its infancy. So I was able to get a position on Wall Street, and like Josh, really enjoyed it. And like Josh, just, really passionate about it. That's the secret ingredient here, right? You do whatever you're passionate about as a young professional, and hopefully you can find something that you're passionate about, before it's too late.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great note to end. Eric Schmidt, Josh Shimmer, it was really great to have you guys. I think people are going to love this. A lot of, I think, information that was shared that I don't hear much about, to be honest, especially on the pharma side, people learning about what you guys do. So I think they'll love this. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks very
so
much,
for
Ron.
having us.